A World Heritage Palace in Iran was damaged after airstrikes. Oil prices in the United States surged sharply. According to the Iranian Students News Agency, ISNA, and several Iranian media outlets, following a U.S. and Israeli attack on Arg Square in Tehran on the evening of March 1st, part of the Golistan Palace, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was damaged. So far, there have been no reports of major structural damage to the main building. However, many windows, doors, and decorative glass panels in the palace were shattered due to the shock waves from the explosion. Antique artifacts inside the palace had previously been moved to secure storage locations, so they were not affected. In a statement released on March 2nd, UNESCO said the royal palace was impacted by debris and blast waves following the airstrike on Arg Square, which lies within the protective buffer zone of the heritage site in Tehran. The organization expressed concern about the protection of cultural heritage amid escalating violence in the Middle East. At the Marble Throne Hall on the ground floor, several ceiling decorations dating back to around 1750 fell as a result of the blast. Windows facing both the inner courtyard and the exterior were shattered, and some sections of the floor were also damaged. The Mirror Hall, designed by architect Abul Hassan Isfahani, 1861 to 1946, and renowned for its intricate mirror mosaic decorations, was also affected. All exterior windows of the hall were broken, and many parts of the ceiling's decorative elements suffered severe damage. Iran's Minister of Cultural Heritage, Tourism and Handicrafts, Reza Salehi Amiri, has submitted an official report to UNESCO, requesting the organization to send experts to the site to assess the extent of the damage and assist with restoration efforts. Afarin Imami, director of the palace, said emotionally that the artifacts in the palace are like her children, and that it is heartbreaking to see many architectural details, some of which had only recently been restored, damaged by the blast. Golistan Palace was originally built during the Safavid Empire in the 16th century, and was later expanded to become the center of power of the Qajar dynasty. Most of the complex's current architectural form was completed in the 19th century, blending traditional Persian craftsmanship with Western influences. In 2013, the complex was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Under international law, cultural heritage sites are protected by the 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the Event of Armed Conflict and the 1972 World Heritage Convention. According to the International Criminal Court, ICC, the intentional destruction of cultural heritage can be considered a war crime. On March 4th, the average retail price of diesel in the United States surpassed $4 per gallon for the first time in nearly 2 years, and is expected to continue rising in the coming days as tensions between the United States, Israel, and Iran escalate. The increase could place significant pressure on consumers, as higher transportation costs may drive up prices for many goods, including food, construction materials, and furniture. Diesel fuel, which is widely used in freight transportation, industrial production, and agriculture, has surged after Iran responded to U.S. and Israeli attacks by targeting certain energy infrastructure facilities across the Middle East. The rising tensions have also increased the risk of disruptions to oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important global energy transit routes. According to the American Automobile Association, AAA, the average diesel price across the United States on March 4th increased by 14.7 cents from the previous day to $4.04 per gallon. This marks the largest single-day increase since May 2022, and the first time diesel prices have exceeded $4 per gallon since 2024. Patrick DeHaan, an analyst at GasBuddy, said the national average price could continue rising to around $4.25 to $4.45 per gallon in the coming days. However, developments in the Middle East conflict could cause prices to fluctuate in either direction. On the same day, U.S. diesel futures climbed to about $3.45 per gallon, the highest level since September 2024. Experts say the global diesel supply remains relatively tight, partly due to increased demand for heating and electricity generation during winter in the United States and other regions, while refining capacity has not yet fully recovered from disruptions in recent years. According to Alex Hodes, Director of Market Strategy at StoneX, the tight supply situation makes the diesel market more sensitive to geopolitical developments in the Middle East than many other types of fuel. He also noted that disruptions to crude oil supplies from the Middle East could have a disproportionate impact on distillate products such as diesel and jet fuel, since crude oil from the region typically yields a higher share of refined distillate products. Data from the commodity analytics firm Vortexa shows that about 900,000 barrels of diesel and 350,000 barrels of jet fuel are shipped out of the Gulf region each day. This represents roughly 10% of global seaborne diesel supply and 20% of global seaborne jet fuel supply. The Middle East crisis has pushed up prices for many types of fuel along with crude oil, creating political risks for U.S. President Donald Trump and the Republican Party, particularly as the U.S. midterm elections scheduled for November approach. The U.S. triggers a ticking time bomb for a major war on Iranian territory. More than 500 U.S. troops reportedly killed or wounded in Iranian attacks across the Middle East. On March 4, Ali Larijani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, claimed that more than 500 U.S. soldiers have been killed since the war launched by the United States and Israel against Iran began on February 28. Larijani argued that U.S. President Donald Trump had been influenced by the political calculations of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, thereby pushing the American people into what he described as an unjust war against Iran. The Iranian official questioned whether, if more than 500 American troops had died within just a few days, President Trump was still pursuing the America First policy, or instead placing Israel's interests above those of the United States. However, Larijani did not provide concrete evidence to support the claim that more than 500 U.S. troops had been killed. Earlier, the Pentagon, U.S. Department of Defense, reported that 6 American soldiers had died since February 28, including 4 troops killed in Iraq during attacks targeting U.S. forces in the region. The United States and Israel launched military strikes against Iran on February 28, stating that the operation was intended to eliminate threats from Tehran's nuclear and missile programs. According to figures released by the Iranian government, the U.S. and Israeli airstrikes have killed 1,045 people in Iran. This number is nearly equal to the total casualties during the 12-day conflict between Israel and Iran in June 2025, which resulted in around 1,060 deaths. In response, Iran has carried out a series of missile and drone (UAV) attacks targeting Israel as well as U.S. military bases and facilities across the Middle East. These targets are located in several countries in the region, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Oman. Israel's economy risks losing billions of dollars each week due to conflict with Iran. On March 4, Israel's Ministry of Finance warned that the ongoing conflict with Iran is costing the country's economy about 9.4 billion shekels, ILS, per week, equivalent to nearly $3 billion, if nationwide restrictions on economic activity continue to remain in place. In a letter sent to Major General Rafi Milo, commander of the Home Front Command of the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, Ilan Ram, Director General of Israel's Ministry of Finance, called for a partial easing of the restrictions, allowing some businesses and government offices to gradually reopen starting on March 5. Ram emphasized that the necessity of defense policies to adapt to the current security situation cannot be denied. However, the widespread freeze on most economic activities is also causing significant economic damage. According to him, after 2.5 years of Israel's economy facing pressure from rising security costs and the impact of the war with Hamas, the government needs to find a solution that both ensures national security on the home front and maintains the vitality of the economy. After Israel and the United States launched a military campaign against Iran on February 28, prompting Tehran to retaliate with missile and drone attacks, the IDF Home Front Command issued nationwide emergency guidelines. These measures banned large public gatherings, suspended educational activities, and closed many government offices, except for essential businesses and services. The measures have also restricted commuting to workplaces, forcing many employees to work remotely, while schools remain closed. On March 2nd, after reassessing the security situation amid the conflict with Iran, the IDF Home Front Command extended the nationwide restrictions until the evening of March 7th. Mr. Elon Rome proposed shifting from the current strict restriction level, red alert, to an orange alert level, which would allow certain economic activities to resume under specific conditions, such as working in offices while remaining close to designated safe shelters. However, educational institutions would continue to remain closed. According to estimates from Israel's Ministry of Finance, if the orange restriction level is implemented, weekly economic losses would be around 4.5 billion shekels, equivalent to approximately $1.5 billion. When contacted by the press, the IDF Home Front Command declined to comment on the proposal. Under the current restrictions, Israel's economic losses are estimated at about $3 billion per week, mainly due to school closures, the suspension of operations at many government offices, and the mobilization of reserve forces. Meanwhile, the Times of Israel reported that the Israeli military could continue its military campaign in Iran for at least 1 to 2 more weeks, aiming to strike thousands of additional targets belonging to the Iranian government and military. From the U.S. perspective, Kent Smetters, director of the Penn-Wharton budget model at the University of Pennsylvania, stated that beyond direct military spending, the economic cost to the United States from a military campaign against Iran could reach around $115 billion. However, this figure could range from $50 billion to about $210 billion, depending on the scale and duration of the conflict.